Welcome to the third episode of The Greatest Movies Never Made. This week, we're going to be jumping in and talking about Stanley Kubrick's 1969 Napoleon script. I'm your host, Ryan Presky, and I'm joined by my co-host, Adam Spring.
Hello.
Here we are. We're doing it.
We're doing it big.
Yeah, we're doing it real big. Actually, we are doing it big because this could have been one of the biggest movies ever made. In 1969, it would have been probably the biggest movie ever made.
You think so, eh?
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about Stanley Kubrick. We're going to be going into his career a little bit, talking about the script, obviously. The year before, he released 2001, A Space Odyssey, which might be one of the best movies ever made, I think. I mean, the effects hold up today in a way that is unbelievable.
When I didn't even watch the entire thing. It was in class, and I don't know, that environment probably had an effect on it, if I realistically speaking. But I was sitting there in class and thinking, I just need to leave. I didn't watch the entire thing, so I can't really comment too much on 2001.
Yeah. If you're watching it in class too, that's a movie that you're going to have to watch in parts, right? There's no class that's 3 hours long.
Yeah, well, I guess it wouldn't have been a one class,
Yeah.
but
And that's a movie I said earlier. You got to fully commit yourself to. You got to sit down, no distractions, maybe a little doobie, and just zone out and watch it. But it's great. Predicted a lot of things. I think they predicted iPads in 1969.
really.
Yeah, pretty crazy. A few years before that, he made Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Caring and
Love bombs.
Love the Bomb. No, How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb.
That was a funny one.
It was really funny. We were talking about it earlier. Not a lot of comedies from the 60s or earlier, the 50s. They don't really get me. I mean, I have an appreciation for the Three Stooges and for Charlie Chaplin, but they don't make me laugh out loud. And I was laughing the whole time watching this movie.
Yeah, there were a lot of really funny parts of this movie for sure.
Hmm.
I the two of the I honestly I can't remember which ranking a lot of the people were, but one of the two guys, both the guys really in the scene with, or in the situation where the guy who ordered the planes to attack Russia was
Hmm.
stuck in that room with his,
The Rogue General.
yeah, I thought that whole thing was hilarious. Him being obsessed with the fluids and fluidation and all that stuff.
Peter Sellers. He would later go on to play the Pink Panther. He killed it in this movie. All three of his roles were really funny.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was playing multiple characters. When you told me that, I thought that was
I didn't
hilarious.
either. I looked on the IMDb afterwards and I thought, oh my God, how could I not have realized this? There was something with, I forget his name too, the president and the guy who's trying to get the codes from the general, that I was like, oh, these guys seem similar. But when the wheelchair Nazi loving guy came in, I was pretty convinced that was a different actor. So an amazing movie, hilarious, Doctor Strangelove. First time I ever saw it was a few days ago, and I would say after sitting on it for a few days, it's probably in the top 10 greatest comedies of all time.
Yeah, you think so, eh?
I do. I don't know what the list or the rankings would be, but I think critically speaking and just from my own interpretation, I think 100% it would be in the top 10 comedies of all time.
Yeah, well, I could see that. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some list out there that had it up there, or multiple lists, because it was really funny.
Yeah, it is in the AFI's top 100 movies of all time.
Really, I honestly had never heard of it until I watched it.
Hmm.
I didn't even know it was a thing. I mean, I guess because it's over 50 years old at this point, but
It was also kind of pretty advanced for its time. This was a time in cinema where there was a lot of war films celebrating America, showing how great America is in war, and other war films were like musical comedies.
hmm
But this was a satirical war comedy.
kind of showing that they're morons.
Yeah, showing the people, the soldiers, all of them are fighting this insane war, and they
For
get all
no reason.
Yeah.
For fluidation for fighting fluidation.
So those are the two movies that I'm more familiar with that he made before he was going to make Napoleon. He obviously went on to do The Shining.
That's
Barry
one of my
Lyndon.
favorite horrors of all time.
Well, The Shining is up there in list 2 for the greatest horror movies of all time.
Interestingly, though, side note, Stephen King hated it.
Interestingly, Stephen King hated it, and it was nominated for 2 Razzie Awards the year it came out.
What's Razzie?
The Razzies are the year's worst in film every year.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, all award ceremonies are in one way kind of stupid, right? But this one is probably the least credible, dumbest one out there.
Yeah.
And the first year it started was the year that they nominated The Shining, so 1980. And it was probably just a handful of people. You know, it's like a group of friends that got together and they just were like, this is the worst in film. And they said The Shining.
I'm very honestly, I'm speechless.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very surprised by that.
They said worst directing for Stanley Kubrick and worst actress, Shelley Duvall,
That's
the lead
Wendy
actress.
or the wife, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
I think her name's Wendy. He went on to do Barry Lyndon. I'm not super familiar with, but he used a lot of the historical research he did for Napoleon. Full Metal Jacket, which I just watched for the first time pretty recently too, and it's pretty amazing.
I don't even honestly. I've heard of Full Metal Jacket so many times, and I can't think of what it's about.
For me, I've heard of all these war movies, and I don't know. A while ago, I saw Saving Private Ryan, and ever since then, I was like, no war movie competes with this. This is the best one ever. But this Full Metal Jacket was really good. Again, he likes to dive into these war films.
So what is it about though? What war?
It's about the Vietnam War.
And I'm assuming this one's not a comedy like
No,
Dr.
it's not a
Strangelove.
comedy. But there's dark humor in a lot of his movies. There's certainly dark humor in this. So that's just a little bit of the films of Stanley Kubrick. There's obviously a lot more. His last film, Eyes Wide Shut, which I haven't seen. Some of his earlier films, Fear and Desire, which he hates.
He's not a fan of it.
No, he's not. I have it somewhere here in my notes, but he actually famously went out and bought all the prints of the film so no one could see it. Back in a time when there was
Bold
just
move.
prints. Yeah. Now anyone could probably see it, I'm sure. Stream it online. So let's talk about his unproduced script, 1969's Napoleon. After 2001, Kubrick planned a large-scale Napoleon biopic. To prepare, he watched every film available at the time with similar themes, including Abel Gantz's Napoleon and the Soviet film series War and Peace. He conducted additional research with books about Napoleon and then wrote a preliminary screenplay. With all the research and assistance, he created a catalog of all the places and a history of all of Napoleon's inner circle. Locations were scouted in France and the United Kingdom, with battle sequences to be filmed in Romania with the support of the Romanian army, with up to 30,000 soldiers. That's pretty massive. 30,000 soldiers. Kubrick's brother-in-law, John Harlan, told the British Film Institute that David Hemmings was set to star before the role was passed to Jack Nicholson, who later went on to act for Kubrick in The Shining.
In Shining, yeah.
Audrey Hepburn was Kubrick's preference for the role of Josephine, the main female protagonist in the film. Kubrick expressed uncertainty when discussing the progress and final product to his financial backers. However, he also expected this to be, quote unquote, the best movie ever made.
He expected it to be.
He expected it to be the best movie ever made. And coming off of 2001, why wouldn't you believe him? I'd believe him. I also read the script, and it's pretty amazing. It's actually a really great script.
I'm interested to hear why it didn't get made then.
Well, you could kind of put some pieces together right now from what I've told you, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it right now. The film was ultimately canceled for a number of reasons. The cost of location filming, Sergei Bondarchuk's westernized adaptation of Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace in 1968, the year before, and the financial failure of Bondarchuk's Napoleon-themed Waterloo in 1970, which is when production of this would have started. Like I said, Kubrick's historical research would later be used in the 1970 film Barry Lyndon, which he wrote and directed. With financing falling through, Kubrick decided to settle for a low-budget film instead, and he went to A Clockwork Orange, and that came out in 1971. The film would have used expiratory charts, graphics, and maps as a means of visually demonstrating Napoleon's conquest and all that. Again, it would have been kind of groundbreaking to use those effects at the time. With his research, he created a whole new system of cataloging information. He would use a picture file of approximately 15,000 Napoleon subjects on an IMB aperture card. So he created that way of storing information.
He would do what?
He essentially created a USB port
To save all this information on Napoleon.
to save everything. Yeah, 15,000 pieces of information on Napoleon. He put on one little file.
So he's a genius.
He honestly is probably the most revolutionary director of all time.
Huh. I honestly didn't realize how big an impact one person could have made on the movie industry, I guess.
Well, if you look at,
But I guess that probably revolutionized everything.
yeah, if you look at all these directors now, if I'm sure they were influenced by a few directors, and Kubrick has got to be the number one. That he wanted to solve the problem of stars by casting unknowns, so this would have helped with the cost of the film. He was quoted as saying, "The main impetus of going to the movies is word of mouth recommendations from your friends." And again, kind of groundbreaking, because at the time it was still the studio, right?
Mm-hmm.
The whole production of Hollywood was the studio, where actors worked for the studio. They had contracts with the studio. But now he's saying, no, it doesn't matter about the actors in the film. It matters about the story and the people that come to
Mm-hmm.
the film and just tell their friends to come to go see it. And that's how cinema is now.
Mm-hmm.
So the costumes in the film would have been special paper uniforms. He was quoted as saying, "A New York firm who can produce a printed uniform on a DuPont fireproof drip dry paper fabric, which has a 300-pound breaking strength, even wet, for $1 to $4. For $1 to $4, all of his 30,000 soldiers would have had uniforms.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty insane.
To save money, he would have used cheap sets and the front projection technique, which he developed during the filming of 2001, a year before. Front projection effect is the process in film in which the foreground performance is combined with pre-filmed background footage. It was created in 1949 by Philip V. Palmquist. One of his earliest uses was Kubrick's 2001. With digital compositioning becoming the most common method used today, front projection has become less used and essential. The last major blockbuster to use this technique included Cliffhanger, Oblivion, and Skyfall.
Skyfall, the James Bond movie?
Yeah. So it's not so much used today just because,
Yeah, I mean, it seems kind of unnecessary at this point.
exactly, it's unnecessary, but it was used from Kubrick, not creating it, obviously. I said Philip V. Palmquist created it, but he kind of perfected
Popularized it?
and popularized it, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess up until the point where we could easily use our editing software and whatever
Mhm.
to make whatever background we needed. I guess that probably would have made a huge impact as well.
For like 40 years, it was in all of film.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, he would have used an entire army for the film. He was quoted, "We have received bids from Romania to provide up to maximum of 30,000 troops."
Okay, so hang on, let me cut you off for a second. I may have misunderstood before. Are you saying he actually was planning on having 30,000 people to play the army and not just using like
Not only 30,000 people, 30,000 soldiers, an actual army.
actual soldiers?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I definitely misunderstood you before when you said that.
Quoted as saying, "We have received bids from Romania to provide up to a maximum of 30,000 troops at $2 per man, though it's unlikely we exceed 15,000 men on the largest day."
Well,
Still pretty
That's
massive.
pretty insane still, yeah.
In preparation, he even examined historical paintings of battles to know the exact weather to replicate on set. So he's that precise with his work. In an interview with Michael Cimette prior to the release of The Shining, Kubrick said, "Napoleon himself once remarked what a great novel his life would be. I'm sure he would have said movie if he had known about them. His entire life is the story, and it works perfectly well in the order it happened. It would also be nice to do it as a 20-hour TV series, but there is, as yet, not enough money available to TV to properly budget such a venture. Of course, there is a tremendous problem of the actor to play Napoleon. Al Pacino comes to mind, and there's always the possibility of shooting the 20 episodes in such a way that he would be 50 by the time he got to St. Helena. Al, I'm joking. Again, pretty revolutionary. He says the landscape of TV just can't handle that, but it would work better as a 20-hour series.
Hmm.
In today's world, it would. And
Yeah.
Spielberg, who famously took over production on Kubrick's AI after his passing, is reportedly working on a similar TV project.
Who is that? Spielberg is?
Steven Spielberg.
Huh. That would be really cool.
Mhm.
But is Kubrick gonna be involved in any way, or is it's not? It's
Yeah.
oh, he is.
In March of 2013, Steven Spielberg announced his intentions on creating a TV miniseries for HBO that would use Kubrick's script and his family and his vision for inspiration.
That's cool. I'll
Yeah.
probably watch that.
Yep. And Cary Fukunaga was announced to direct.
What's she done?
It's a man.
Oh, Carrie. I just assumed he was a woman. What's he done?
He directed True Detective season 1.
Hmm.
And in August of 2018, David Serrero, a French opera singer, adapted the screenplay for stage in a New York production. So this script's been out there. People are seeing it. They see how good it is, and they want it to be seen by people.
People are interested.
Yep. If you're ready, we could jump right into the script. I read the script. I think it's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I took some notes, just brief notes on each scene. We'll go scene by scene to get through it. Fair warning, this is a biopic of Napoleon, and he goes from his birth to his death.
Not early, eh?
Yeah, he goes all the way there. You see, I think you must see every position of rank he holds at one point or another.
Mm-hmm.
So Napoleon, a screenplay by Stanley Kubrick. It was written in September 29th, 1969. Scene 1. We see a 4-year-old Napoleon being cradled by his mother. Main titles, Napoleon. Age 9, Napoleon is woken by a monk at the Royal Military College, where he would spend the next 5 years. The boys at the dormitory tease and physically abuse him. Age 16, Napoleon is now a sub-lieutenant. He is part of a group tasked with loading and firing cannons. He has also learned the art of map reading. Napoleon is seen meeting a streetwalker and brings her home. Clueless at first, but soon the two make their way into the bedroom. End scene. So we just see him a little bit as a boy, a young man.
And with a prostitute.
Well, he's in Kubrick's mind, it's like a young man thing. It's like, oh, he's growing up. This is what he does.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Well,
bullied at
it's
first.
supposed to be a long time ago too. I guess it's
It's more normal. I mean,
probably accurate based on what you've said so far about Kubrick.
Kubrick with the female protagonist in his films isn't the greatest. There's not many of them.
Mm-hmm.
Scene 2, 1789 Revolution. Monsieur Valak, the revolutionary leader, addresses a large crowd in front of several piked heads, including the governor of Bastille. Napoleon, tasked with arresting the man, approaches him, but is met with verbal resistance. After a warning, Napoleon pulls out a revolver and shoots him dead in front of his men and the supporters. End scene.
He's already killing mans.
Well, it's just showing
Shooting
that
motherfuckers.
now he has power. Now he has a position where he can shoot someone with no consequences,
Mhm.
and it's showing here's guns, basically. Like, here's the power of weaponry.
Mm-hmm.
Scene 3. It is the summer of 1793. King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette have been ambushed and publicly mocked. Civil war has swept France as the two forces fight for the naval base at Toulon. General Carteau is commanding a French army of 10,000 and awaits the arrival of Paul Barras, the deputy of the Committee of Public Safety. The meeting begins. 30 to 40 high-ranking officers are present, including Napoleon, who is now the captain of artillery. With no new suggestions, Napoleon speaks up, and we see his plans of a surprise ambush successfully work as he rides into the one battle on a white horse. After the success, he is promoted to brigade general. Scene 4. Robespierre's death in July of 1794 ended the reign of terror, and Barras decided to host a party for all the most powerful figures, where Napoleon first met Josephine de Beauharnais. She gives him no attention, so he goes to the bar, where the bartender tells him of the profits of war and the rumors surrounding Barras's bisexuality. The room is then turned into a stage, where a theatrical scene quickly turns into an orgy accompanied by Mozart music.
Interesting.
It's showing the extravagant lifestyle of these powerful French people at the time.
Yeah.
Scene 5. Barras invites Napoleon to his office and details an upcoming attack and explains how poorly prepared he is. He considers taking his money and escorts and running away before Napoleon agrees to do all of the duties necessary but let Barras keep his title. Barras agrees. And after the success, Napoleon is made commander of the army in Italy. At his new headquarters in Paris, Eugene de Beauharnais, son of Josephine, is ushered in to ask for his father's sword back, which was taken when all the weapons were seized as an order by the new commander. Napoleon, instead of giving it back, he brings the sword to Josephine's house, where the two talk and eventually make love. Make love. The two eventually have sex.
It's such a movie term.
The two soon after get married, and we see very quickly after a montage of Josephine's affair with Hippolyte Charles, the aide of one of Napoleon's generals. This is all depicted while we get a voiceover from Napoleon emphasizing his love, but ending in a suspicion of her. Scene 6. The Italian campaign. We see an epic battle as Napoleon studies from afar. After finding the Austrians' weakness, he slaughters the opposing troops and essentially becomes the ruler of Italy, which sparks his desire for overall power. Dawned with power, Napoleon summons Charles, and the two have a normal conversation before escorting the aide out. Napoleon shows an anonymous note to his brother Joseph and trusted ally Junia, which reveals the two's affair. They say they know nothing about it, so Napoleon drops it. You with me so far?
I think so.
Yeah. It does go pretty quick. We're going right into it. He's getting this power position, this power, this position. Scene 7, July 2nd, 1798. Napoleon, with 40,000 troops, plans an attack on England through their eastern empire, Egypt. The Mameluke cavalry is almost entirely defeated by the superior strategies and heavy artillery. Napoleon has taken the leader of the Mameluke, Murad Bey's mansion, and he is using it now as his headquarters. He writes a letter to his brother, angry at him for not supporting Josephine. However, he is stopped by Juniat, who admits to writing the previous letter and being witness to the affair. So Napoleon leaves. He returns home to speak with her and admits of all of his affairs, and although very angry, he agrees to never leave Josephine.
This is a pretty healthy relationship they got.
Scene 8. Coup d'etat. As an imminent plot to seize power by the Jacobean Party, Barras is forced to resign. Delbril, the leader of the Jacobean Party, is making a speech that is not entirely supported. Napoleon shows his support, and at 30 years old is made the first consul and head of the executive for the next 10 years. So more power.
Mm-hmm.
Scene 9. Empire. December 2nd, 1804. Napoleon is made Emperor of France. At a dinner party, Napoleon sneaks off with a fellow married party guest and is interrupted by Josephine. He later threatens her with divorce and banishes her from the bedroom. At this time, Tsar Alexander of Russia, Emperor Francis II of Austria, and Napoleon form an alliance, as Napoleon just lost a number of ships to the English. Queen Louisa and King Wilhelm of Prussia plan an attack. However, no longer accompanied by Russia, they are easily defeated. Napoleon makes Alexander the mediator between France and England, and if a treaty is not reached in months, he will call for full-on war. Scene 10.
Quick note.
Yep.
He crowned himself emperor, but normally it was just France just had kings and queens before. Emperor, it wasn't a thing. He just decided that he liked that better, so he decided he was emperor instead of king.
Is that a factor you're telling me, or did I make a mistake?
No, I'm just telling you that.
That's really interesting. I didn't even notice. I had King Louis the 16th written down. I didn't even notice it went from king to emperor.
Yeah, he just liked it better.
I think king's cooler than emperor.
I don't know. Emperor sounds kind of more powerful to me.
Maybe not. Maybe back then, but today, how many kings are there? There's no kings. You can name emperors.
Could I?
I couldn't, but I couldn't even name kings.
Well, queens. There's a queen. The Queen of England.
And isn't there a king? Oh, is he dead?
There's no king, I'm pretty sure, no.
He's dead?
I guess. I don't know. I might be completely wrong.
But when the queen dies, what? Will Harry become king?
I guess. And
Or
what's
the
her
oldest
name?
one?
Meghan
Who's the oldest
Markle?
one?
She's not that's not the oldest one, actually.
Is that how it works? The oldest
But
one
yeah,
does?
the oldest one would be the next in line, I guess.
What's the point of even being the youngest prince?
There isn't any.
That's brutal. That's why in all those movies and shows, the prince is always the young brother is always the dick.
They're always so jealous and want to like kill the prince. Yeah. Exactly.
That probably happened a lot, eh?
For sure.
That's fucked. All right, scene
I
10.
just want to also just say I'm 99% sure of what I said before with the emperor thing. I'll double check it after.
Well, it makes sense because I did say king earlier and I said emperor. I don't think I would have just switched up the terms. It
hmm
must have been in the script.
Well, yeah, no, he definitely was emperor, but I
Mm.
think that I'm more so referring to the fact that he just liked it better and thought it was sounded stronger.
It makes sense. From everything I've gathered from Napoleon, just from the script and from like the little research I did, it seemed like he did have a little bit of a Napoleon complex going on. Heyo! Scene 10. Napoleon divorces Josephine. She and her daughter, Hortense, move out. He then remarries Mary Louise, who is the daughter of Francis II, who is the Emperor of Austria. At first nervous to consummate, Napoleon eases her into it with conversation and humor. She then gives birth to Napoleon's first child, the King of Rome, who I'm not sure if he had a name, but in this he's just referred to as the King of Rome. Doesn't sound like it's too surprising if that was just.
No, he definitely had a name.
Oh, he did? Oh.
Yeah, that was a big back then. Having your name was everything.
Yeah, but if your name's the King of Rome, that's a pretty good name,
Then
right?
what? Then his son would be the king of King of Rome the
The
second.
second. Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure he had a name.
Scene 11. Defeat. By 1810, relations between France and Russia had wore thin. Alexander has grown frustrated with the Tilst Treaty, which states that Russia must join a continental blockade, boycott all English goods, seize dealings, and be allies to France. Fearing retaliation from his people, Alexander will no longer stick to the treaty. On May 16th, Napoleon invited Allied monarchs together to plan their attack on Russia, with hopes of Alexander surrendering before any real harm had to be done to a friend. So Napoleon considered Alexander a friend, but he still knows that this is bigger than friendship. This is war. So
Mm-hmm.
if he's going to not support him anymore, he's going to have to attack him. An army of 400,000 approach. Unprepared, the Russian army continues to move back, burning and destroying their path behind them.
Scorched earth.
Yep, not giving any like easy way of approach. This is the name I'm gonna have the most trouble with, but I'm just gonna commit and hope it works. Count Fyodor Vasilievich Rostopchin.
Here, wait, do you want me to? Can I look at
You
it?
know it.
No, I want to look at it. See if I can make sure it's not just being completely butchered.
Sure. Come look at
Wait,
it.
one sec.
You have to repeat it though. So
Fyodor Vasilievich Rostopchin.
exactly what I said, basically.
Pretty much, yeah, I guess.
So it was pretty close. So the governor of Moscow creates a plan alternatively from the Tsar's, which involves the secret police creating massive fires in Moscow. Napoleon sees these fires and assumes Alexander will want to end the destruction and sign the treaty immediately. However, the fires instead bring together all the people of Moscow who were at first hesitant on getting into war. They're now all like, okay, we'll die for this. Alexander, knowing their past relationship and Napoleon's intention of getting the treaty signed, he postpones signing so that Napoleon and his men will have to either fight immediately or have to retreat in the dead of winter, which they're not prepared for a winter in Russia. On October 20th, facing a long winter, Napoleon withdraws the Grand Army from Moscow. On the way home, soldiers start dying from starvation, while horses were freezing to death in the negative 30-degree weather.
Because all the stuff was burnt, so they had no sources of food.
Well, they had whatever supplies and rations they brought, but they've been there for a long time. They must be wearing thin. There's one horrific moment in the script that depicts a group of soldiers that are crammed into a small heated kind of tent thing. There's horses inside and a bunch of soldiers literally elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder. And there's people trying to get in to get warm, but the people inside are holding them out because it's so full they can't even open the door to get anyone in. And then all of a sudden, inside the lamp, whatever is keeping them warm, the fire ignites the whole tent, and everyone inside burns to death. And everyone that's outside that was cold comes around the tent and warms up by the fire while the people are inside screaming to death. It shows just like the brutality of war. And Kubrick does that a lot. He did that on Full Metal Jacket too. I haven't seen Barry Lyndon, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's stuff like that in there too.
That's crazy. That's a pretty dark scene.
It's pretty dark. There's other dark moments where one of the soldiers is carrying the group's dog on their back because its feet are frostbitten and can't walk anymore, and one soldier wants to eat the dog. It's war, man.
Yeah.
It shows how horrific it could get. And I do like that actually because up till now it was just a biopic showing like his reign to power. Not how cool it was, but there is kind of this level of, oh, look how big he can get, and now it's like, but like look how sad it can be.
Mm-hmm.
Scene 12: the invasion of France, January 1st, 1814. Russia, England, Prussia, and Austria all together invade France. Napoleon and his army would prevail through the countryside for 2 months using rapid marches and sneak attacks. Successfully, they were doing this.
Yeah, he was a war genius.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he was really not the first one, but
He was
probably
he
the
was
greatest
revolutionary in terms of the way that people fought wars.
war strategies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've seen that already. We've seen him sticking back from the fight,
Mm-hmm.
observing it to know what to do. As numbers dwindle, Napoleon heads to Paris, where he believes to be safe under the protection of his brother, who he made leader, Joseph. However, a note to Marie Louise was intercepted, so Paris is unequipped to defend or protest, since they don't know of anything going on. And on the way, he is met by a larger army on the outskirts, and he surrenders. Scene 13, Elba. As part of the Treaty of Fontainebleau. What? You don't think I know how to speak French? In April of 1814, Napoleon was named emperor of this tiny island of Elba. He was given $2 million per year, an army of 700, and 3 naval ships. So, I mean, it's a pretty good deal for
yeah. He's been pretty.
if you're
he's pretty
considered
well
a war
equipped.
criminal.
Yeah, not bad.
Back at Malmaison, Tsar Alexander and Josephine start a romantic relationship. She would eventually die 2 weeks later of pneumonia. So
That's sad.
Marie Louise was forbidden by her father from ever speaking to Napoleon again, and has since his banishment started a relationship with General Nieperg, and they eventually had 2 kids together. Scene 14. Napoleon and Maria Louise's son, the King of Rome, would spend the rest of his life in isolation being cared for by nurses until his death at the age of 22 years old. King Louis XVIII.
18th. Is it 18th?
Yeah, sorry. Louis XVIII was made emperor in 1814, but by 1815 had lost the support of the people. So I don't know if the emperor title remained after.
I don't think
Okay,
so.
so maybe he was made king.
Maybe it did for him, and then it died, went back to king. I
Yeah,
don't
for
know.
a few years. So this caused Napoleon to want to get that power back. So for one last push, he took a small army to seize and was met by a group of around 300 tasked with protecting the border. Instead, Napoleon talked them into joining him. Under the impression that Prussia was no longer in the fight, Napoleon believed that he could swiftly defeat the Wellington army, which stood in its way. However, instead of fleeing, Wellington stood their ground, knowing that the Prussian allies would be there to assist them shortly. In addition to this, Napoleon wanted to wait until the soil was dry to plant his guns at around noon, which gave enough time for the Prussians to show up and aid in the battle. So a bunch of just not right calls on Napoleon.
Mm-hmm.
Again, though, Napoleon is nearly a mile behind the battle. This time he's not physically, he's not watching the battle and making a strategy. He's ill. He's very ill. Because of this, he makes Marshal Ney. He assigns him to tactical handler. So he launched the first attack at 1:30 with major loss. At 3:30, thinking the English to be retreating, he sends more men, unsupported by infantry, since he thinks they're retreating anyways. And we see another massive loss of men and horses. By 6 p.m., Napoleon reliefs a beaten and bloody Ney and orders 14,000 men to try and hold the Prussian army. Again, doesn't go so well.
Unsuccessful.
7:30, 5 battalions of Ney's final assault. This defeat would eventually crack France's morale. that's pretty much it. The British cavalry charges, and the panicked French run away, the remaining. And Marshal Ney, still soaked in blood and dirt, instead of running away, he continues to fight. He charges on, and he survives the battle, only to be shot for treason by the returning monarch. So it doesn't end up too well for him. But what happens to Napoleon? Well,
Rebanished.
scene 15, St. Helena. So Napoleon escaped France. He ran with the rest of the guys. He wasn't as brave as Ney, and he surrendered to the English. He was then sent to a prison on the tiny island of St. Helena. He didn't get any of the perks like last time, but he'd spend the next 5 years there until his death. And as he grew sicker, he'd talk with Count Bertrand, who was a good friend of his. He was around for most of the battles that were going on. He would talk to him about his love and dreams of Josephine. So he's still thinking about her. And Napoleon would go on to
His first wife, not Mary
first wife.
Louise,
Yeah.
or what was it, Mary
Mary
Louise?
Louise.
Anyways, but yeah. Huh.
And then Napoleon would die on May 5th, 1821, and he was buried in an unmarked grave. The end.
Hmm. That would have been great to see.
It would have been. I mean, it goes through his whole life, and it could be that the script was so good, but it could also just be that maybe
Well,
Napoleon was right.
I always, I mean, as has probably been made pretty obvious, I can't remember a lot of stuff about him. I studied him in high school and university a little bit, but I always found him to be an extremely interesting person. So I think that would definitely have an impact on this overall show. Plus, being directed by Kubrick, that would probably be pretty amazing.
Well, no, this was a movie. Okay,
Yeah.
you said show.
Oh,
It's a-
sorry.
Yeah, it would have been pretty epic.
Mhm.
One of the biggest epics of all time.
Yeah, I would have loved to see that. I'm actually really excited now. Is the HBO one definitely being made?
Well, it was announced at first in 2013. We haven't heard too much about it since. It was brought up again in 2016, where Spielberg said it's still coming.
Mhm.
But that's 2016. That's
Nothing
3 years
since.
ago. I think it will happen. I just don't know when.
Well, I hope so, because I'd love to watch that.
And Spielberg and Kubrick had a close relationship around the end of his life. Spielberg was a huge admirer of him.
Hmm.
So that was the whole script. Pretty good. And then now we're going to get into Napoleon, the production notes. These were all done by Stanley Kubrick on November 22nd, 1968. The length of the film would be 180 minutes, 3 hours, right on par with Kubrick films.
Classic epic film.
Long, he makes you sit there for a whole day. The length schedule would have been 150 days, allowing 10 days lost to travel. The shoot would have been 1.3 minutes average per day, with a start date of July 1st.
Wait, say that again? 1.3
1.3 minutes average per day
of shooting.
of usable film.
That seems like nothing, or is that just, I guess, over 150 days?
It seems like nothing, but yeah, I mean, you better get a 1.3 minutes of film.
Yeah, I just feel like that's so
You
little.
know, it doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes you get nothing, right?
Yeah.
Shit goes wrong. But yeah, this is just a little bit of an insight of how filming works, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The start date was going to be July 1st to September 1st, 1969. Like I said, presumably, knowing Kubrick, his later films, his last 3 films he did, Full Metal Jacket, it took him 5 years to complete. Oh, no, sorry. The Shining took 5 years to complete. Full Metal Jacket took 7 years. And Eyes Wide Shut took 12. So in his later career, he took his time with his films.
Hmm. When you say it took that long, like everything, filming, editing, all the production, all that stuff,
And writing.
So from the very beginning to the very end, right? Okay.
The schedule was 30 days of battles and marches in Yugoslavia, 40 days of location exteriors in Yugoslavia, 40 days of locations interiors in Italy, 30 days of front projections in Yugoslavia, and 10 days lost to travel. Treatment would have been 15 sequences, which will approximately average 12 minutes per sequence, giving 180 minutes. So 13 scenes, basically. 15 scenes, sorry. And cost here. I quoted him on this because I just thought it was so interesting. The four principal categories of costs which represent the largest proportion of any spectacle film are: 1. The large number of extras; 2. The large number of military uniforms; 3. The large number of expensive sets; and 4. Overpriced actors. I intend that for Napoleon these four categories be handled in a financially advantageous manner, which will result in a substantial savings to the budget, allowing the film to be produced for a much lower cost than I had initially thought, without the loss of quality, size, or substance. And he's given some solutions to that. Extras, a briefing of extras. The daily costs in England were 19.20 per day. In Spain, 14.28 per day. Italy, 24 per day. France, 24.3 per day. And like I said, $2 per Romanian soldier. And the Yugoslavian army also offered up to 30,000 soldiers for $5 per soldier a day.
That's crazy. How could it be so cheap?
Well, this is 1969 too.
I guess, but still.
Like I said, the uniforms, they had the ones that were from $1 to $4 for the extras. However, both countries, Romania and Yugoslavia, offered to make authentic uniforms for major characters at $40 rather than the European costumier's $200 price. So he's finding these savings all over the place to get this made.
Mm-hmm.
And he believed that it would be cheaper to make than rent inadequate uniforms. A big price would have been the sets, which would have cost between $3 to $6 million to make. However, he believed that he could have used authentic palaces in France, Italy, and Sweden, which cost between $350 to $750 per day to use. Again, this price is probably way up now.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like I said, he would exploit the front projection techniques as much as he could,
Mm-hmm.
so he wouldn't have to use all the sets. The cast, he didn't want to get any great actors. He wanted to get great actors, but new faces. And I think Jack Nicholson would have fit perfectly with that.
Was he not big before that?
I looked at his IMDb. He had been in several films and stuff, but he wasn't a star yet. He actually, in 1969, was the year that Easy Rider came out, which was the movie that kind of gave him notoriety and fame.
Not The Shining.
No, that was 10 years later.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah, he was
What
in
am I
a
saying?
bunch of films before that. He wanted an actor between the ages of 30 and 35 to play Napoleon at the age of 20, and would be able to get aged up to play him on his death at 51 in St. Helena. He wanted Josephine to be played by an actress 5 to 6 years older than the actor of Napoleon. So to finish off his notes, on November 22nd, 1968, this was his preparation thus far. Number 1, he did all that research on Napoleon. Like I said, the 15,000 subjects, all on that IBM card. Number 2, David Walker, the leading costume designer in England, had begun research and sketches for the project. Number 3, military uniform prototypes have been manufactured. Number 4, location research in France, Italy, Yugoslavia, and soon Romania to be done. Number 5, Felix Markham has sold his rights to the biography of Napoleon and is acting as principal historical advisor, so he wrote the book. Number 6, the biographical file on the principal 50 characters prepared. So any character that was in the script, they all have a extensive biography on them.
Mm-hmm.
Number 7, 500 Napoleon books are available to Kubrick and the entire crew. Number 8, the production designer, art director, and any other necessary production staff have already been engaged by Kubrick. Not officially speaking, I don't know who they were, but he knew who they were. And the final thing is that research on camera/film has been conducted by Kubrick, and even a lens was purchased, allowing for 70mm format, which was pretty big at the time. So that's all the preparation that he did so far. That's the whole script. Everything Kubrick wrote down about it. All right, so yeah, let's talk a little bit about the cast and characters. I didn't want to go too much into casting everyone, and I just want to go off of Stanley Kubrick's ideas. So his first idea for Napoleon was David Hemmings. I wasn't super familiar with him, but he was a very successful character actor. The year before, he starred opposite Jane Fonda in Barbarella in 1968. He was an actor, musician, and director. He had a career spanning years. He appeared in films like Gladiator, Gangs of New York, and his hit 1966 film Blow Up, which probably got Kubrick's attention.
I don't know any of them.
You know Gladiator.
Oh, I know
Yeah,
Gladiator,
and I'm
yeah.
sure you know Gangs of New York too. Came out early 2000s.
Sounds
Martin
familiar.
Scorsese film. Daniel Day-Lewis.
I definitely didn't see it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. There was actually going to be a Martin Scorsese Gangs of New York with The Clash starring in it. That could be a future episode.
That would be interesting.
He died on December 3rd, 2003 of a heart attack on set of his last film, Blessed. The second choice for Napoleon, around the same year, would have been in the 1970 production, was Jack Nicholson. Like I said, he was everything Kubrick was looking for. A great actor, but a new face. And this would have blew him up huge.
Yeah, I'm sure. Not that it mattered.
Yeah, like I said, he'd been working for 10 years, but yet to find a starring role. In 1969, he starred in the film Easy Rider, which sparked his career and got him a Best Actor in a Supporting Role nomination at the Academy Awards. I can't say for certain that Napoleon would have been nominated, but so I guess whatever. Good call. He'd later go to work with Kubrick in 1980's The Shining. Another idea Kubrick had was Al Pacino. This was 10 years later, so this is just him revisiting the idea. I don't know if there was any traction at that point. It might have just been him being like, oh, it would have been a good fit.
Right.
So in 1980, Al Pacino was already a successful young actor, starring in The Godfather Part 1 and 2, Serpico, and Dog Day Afternoon, and he was nominated 4 years in a row at the Academy Awards for all 4 of those films. In sometime during the 70s.
One of the greatest of all time.
Back then, I haven't seen Al Pacino in something good in a while.
No, me neither. Who'd you say is the best now? Off topic. Daniel Day-Lewis, Meryl Streep.
Probably Daniel Day-Lewis. Yeah. I like Meryl Streep too. I don't watch too much of her stuff. Like the stuff I watch, I've seen of hers is a lot of her older stuff. Now she seems to do
smaller things.
Not even smaller things. I guess maybe I'm just thinking of like the few years where she was doing comedy stuff that this is not for me. Josephine de Beauharnais, who was Napoleon's first wife, obviously the most important female character in it, far more than Mary Louise. And Kubrick thought Audrey Hepburn would be good for her. So this somewhat contradicts Kubrick's new face idea, because she was
already popular.
Yeah, probably the biggest one of the biggest female stars at the time. But the presence and beauty that he wanted the character to have, like if you read the script, you could see it. He wanted her to be the belle of the ball. Everyone was looking at her. That's why Napoleon loved her so much.
Right.
It makes sense. There would have been only a few other people that could portray that to the whole world at the time. Her involvement with 1956's War and Peace, which deals with similar material, may have also pushed Kubrick's thought of her playing the role. So that's really it. Those are only the ones I'm going to talk about. Obviously, Napoleon's mother would have been a big one. They might have cast 2 people to play her, one in the early flashbacks, one in the later ones. So let's talk a little bit about Kubrick trademarks, stuff that appear in all his films that would have appeared in this one. Narration, which would have been heavily featured in this. Napoleon would have narrated a lot of times, and there was a outside force narrating. He wasn't really specified who it was.
Is there always narration? Movies?
It's not that it's always there, but it's there in
a lot of them.
I don't want to start shooting off ones that aren't right, but Full Metal Jacket it was in. I'm pretty sure it's in 2001.
It was definitely at the beginning of Doctor Strangelove. There was some narration.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of The Shining. I feel like there isn't any in that. That's why I asked.
Well, there's the voiceover back and forth between the
Danny
2 people shining.
I can't remember.
Scatman. I don't remember his character's name, but Scatman.
Why are you calling him Scatman?
Well, that's the actor that plays him.
Oh, wait. Well, who's that? Who's Scatman?
The only other person in the
No,
Shining.
I know which character you're referring to. Who is he? Who is that in real life? His name is Scatman.
Yeah, I want to say Scatman
I
Crothers.
don't know. True. Okay.
We might have to cut this out because it might not be Scatman Crothers, but I'm pretty sure it's Scatman.
I didn't know
Crothers.
Scatman was a name. I thought it was a thing that you were.
Well, like I told you, the guy from Doctor Strangelove, his name was Slim Pickens.
Right. Yeah.
People have names, man. Since Lolita, all of his films feature a pivotal bathroom scene. Napoleon is painfully ill and misses the beginning of the final battle in and out of the bathroom. He also takes the girl from the dinner party to the bathroom, it seems
Mhm.
like, where he gets caught for the first time by Josephine. So pretty pivotal
Mhm.
moments. Dark humor featured in a lot of this. This one had some dark humor throughout the script, obviously, particularly with Paul Barras, who the only person I thought could play him, because I'm not so familiar with all these
Mhm.
actors, these older actors, was Peter Sellers, since him and Kubrick already
Yeah.
had a relationship, and I thought he would have been perfect because that was the only like funny character in
In
the.
Strangelove.
No, no,
There
there's
were
a bunch
yeah,
of
because
fun.
I thought that's
The only funny character in the script for
okay. Yeah,
Napoleon
yeah,
was really
yeah.
Paul.
Strangelove. There were a lot of funny characters.
Yep. Plans that go horribly wrong.
Mhm.
Many of his battles went horribly wrong. Emotionally distant characters. Many of the political
Mhm.
figures and the titular character Napoleon, very emotionally distant.
Mhm.
He just wants the power. He doesn't care about all the soldiers. Every film concludes with the end. That's just a little thing. This one had the
Mhm.
end. And he slips in the code CRM 114 in all his
Hmm.
films.
I noticed that in Doctor Strangelove.
You did? I didn't know. I didn't notice it.
That
What
was
was it?
that was the radio like the type of
Oh
radio
yeah,
signal that they would have to use in order to communicate with the planes.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. He used that in a lot. It's like what the people at Pixar do. They put in this. I forget what the number is.
I don't even know.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have
They
no
do the
clue.
same thing. They put this little code in all their
Hmm.
films, and I like that.
I didn't. Now I want to look for it in other Kubrick movies, and
Hmm.
now I want to rewatch The Shining
If
and
you
look
look it
for
up
it.
online, I'm sure they have them all.
Hmm. Back to the bathroom thing. I was just thinking of other scenes, and it's interesting. I would have never even considered that to be one of his themes, but it definitely is like
Hmm.
in Strangelove when the general shoots himself, or in Shining and
Shining.
when he's talking to the guy who killed his family with the axe.
Yeah, and when he goes in and he sees that naked
Yeah,
woman and she turns into him.
him and the son.
Yeah. In Full Metal Jacket, they have the scene where Vincent D'Onofrio's character kills Arlie Emery's
Hmm.
character, and then he kills himself, which is a huge moment.
I You know what?
Sorry, spoiler.
I just find that really cool actually though because I feel like the bathroom is such like a vulnerable place for most people. It's so relatable.
Yeah, that's 100% why he does it, and it's pretty powerful. It's
Yeah.
cool. Okay, so those are a lot of the trademarks that he does in his films that he would have been in this film. So now let's talk about Napoleon in film that we've had so far. So in 1927, years before this would have came
Hmm.
out, there was a 6 hour long silent film biopic of Napoleon's life.
God.
Yeah, I didn't watch it.
Who could really?
In preparation, I did not watch
Who
it. I
could?
apologize.
Oh my goodness, that sounds terrible.
And here's the kicker. The film only gets to the invasion of Italy in 1797, as it was intended to be part one of six.
Oh my God. Are they all gonna be 6 hours? Jeez.
Well, it didn't pan out too well.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I wonder why though.
No, this was actually one of the biggest films from
Are you
1927.
serious?
Well, it was 1927, so
I mean, people still have standards. How can they sit through a 6 hour? Okay.
that was probably like a great experience back then.
I'm blown away by that.
Yeah, it was written and directed by Abel Gance, starring Albert Diondun as Napoleon, and in 1935 there was a re-edited version which added sound effects, dialogue, and new scenes in addition to cutting the runtime down to 2 hours and 20 minutes. So that's a little more digestible.
Hmm.
I still probably wouldn't.
Yeah, me neither.
I'd rather just watch like a History Channel
Yeah,
something at that point.
I need dialogue. I
Mhm.
can't. I mean, if it's a silent film, it's got to be like Charlie Chaplin or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They gotta have like a little music, and it's gotta make me chuckle.
Yeah.
So there was a mini series called Napoleon, which was directed by Yves Simonon, and it starred Christian Gallier, Gerard Depardieu, Isabella Rossellini, and John Malkovich. This was in 2002. So some notable names there. A bigger production, obviously. This was the most expensive television production of all time in Europe,
Hmm.
costing
What's it called again?
It's just called Napoleon,
Okay.
costing 46 million and a handful.
Wow.
It's a French and
Is
Canadian
that
production.
sorry to interrupt. Is that still the record for the most?
I'm not 100% if it's still the most, but I I doubt it.
Hmm.
It could be.
Well, does that doesn't include like the actors what the actors are paid, right?
No, that includes
So
that
I mean,
includes the
it
whole
probably
production.
isn't true anymore then. I feel like the Big Bang cast is
Oh no no
probably
no no! But this is in Europe too.
just specifically in Europe. Okay.
Yeah yeah.
So I don't really I guess I don't know really any European shows.
And I also don't think Big Bang costs 46 million to produce
Well, the
a
actor
season.
they're the most expensive paid actors on
They are,
on TV.
but like the production can't cost
I
that
guess
much.
I guess yeah.
It was nominated for 9 Emmy Awards and one for outstanding costumes for a miniseries, movie, or special. So now just a little fun credits. Napoleon's been featured in a whole bunch of things. In video games, Napoleon's Total War is the sixth installment of Total War, and he's featured in Assassin's Creed Unity.
Hmm.
In films, there have been almost 30 movies with the historical figure, most acting as biopics. However, there's some more fun ones: Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Minions, Night of the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonians, Time Bandits, where he's featured in a more humorous role. Marlon Brando, Tom Burke, Dennis Hopper, Ian Holmes are just a few actors to have portrayed him in a motion picture. In television, there's over 10 shows that were created depicting his life, and a handful of others, including Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, and reoccurring roles in Clone High and Jack of All Trades, played by Vern Troyer.
Clone High. I haven't heard of that in ages.
I just put it in there because I think that's one of the most underrated shows ever. It was so funny, I thought.
I was too young to appreciate it, I think.
That might be true. I might have been too young to appreciate it too, but I still thought it was hilarious. Maybe if I go back now, I won't think it's hilarious.
That's the one where there's a guy in a chair with he has one giant eye and one small eye, right?
I think so. I just remember there was like Abraham Lincoln and Cleopatra in it, and Gandhi. I don't remember which one you were talking about.
I feel like we're talking about the same one, but I can't remember for certain.
Yeah, but you missed and Jack of All Trades, played by Vern Troyer. So that's if you don't remember, that's Mini Me from Austin
Mm.
Powers. So just going more on the
He
the
was going to
humor
be
of his height.
Napoleon?
What?
He would have been Napoleon?
He played Napoleon
Okay.
in Jack of All Trades,
Okay.
which is a TV show.
That's funny.
For music, there's been many artists and songs that reference Napoleon. Most notably, Eurovision Song Contest winner of 1974, ABBA, with their hit song Waterloo, and Coldplay's Viva La Vida. So Napoleon was a short guy, as history goes down, but was he?
He was average for that time, I think.
He was average. I got some facts on that. So the British propaganda at the time depicted Napoleon as a smaller than average height. However, he was cited as being 5'2", which now is still really short.
That would be very short, yeah.
But it was the average height of a French male at the time, and he was sometimes noted as being up to 5'7".
Still be kind of short, but
How did this happen? A likely explanation: when he was as a prisoner on St. Helena, he was measured his height, and they used an English yardstick, which measures out at 2.54 centimeters, while the French inch was 2.7 centimeters. And I started to do that thought in my head, and I was like, doesn't that mean that he'd be given more inches by the English yardstick? But it just got too confusing, so I said, okay, that makes sense. And I just left it. So
well, I started trying to think about it, and
any listener that wants to let me know, feel free. His nickname, Le Petit Caporal, may have added to this confusion, which didn't reference his height, but rather his camaraderie with soldiers. And he also would surround himself with soldiers of the elite guard, which had to be a minimum of 6 feet. So that if you see someone that's 5'2" around a bunch of dudes that are 6 foot, he's gonna look super tiny.
Mm.
So let's back away from Napoleon as a person a bit and jump back into Stanley Kubrick as a person. Some Kubrick facts. Kubrick facts! Despite all of his critical praise and numerous nominations, he was only received one Academy Award, not even for directing, but for special effects on 2001: A Space Odyssey. Of all his amazing performances in all of his films, only 2 actors have ever been recognized at the Academy for appearing in a Kubrick film. Peter Ustinov, who won for Spartacus, and Peter Sellers, who was nominated for Doctor Strangelove.
That's really just those 2?
I thought it's more interesting that he never won for directing.
I guess, well, were his movies not well received by the public? I wonder why that would
No,
be.
they were. So in a span of 46 years, he only released 13 feature films. That could be why he didn't get it. Like, eventually a lot of actors or directors get the win just because they've been nominated or they haven't won for so many years. Like I said earlier, The Shining is praised by horror fans and critics, but upon release, we mentioned it up, Stephen King and the Razzies nominated
Hmm.
it. Barry Lyndon was lit almost entirely organically or with candlelight, and a camera had to be developed by NASA to be able to catch it.
I mean, it probably would have made for a great movie, but that's hilarious to me.
Kubrick originally wanted Eyes Wide Shut to be more comedic and was considering Woody Allen, Harrison Ford, or Steve Martin for the lead role instead of Tom Cruise. And I can't even imagine a world where Woody Allen played the lead in Eyes Wide Shut, especially now, looking back on that movie. Oh boy, that would have been wild. He holds the Guinness World Record for the longest continuous film shoot, lasting 15 months for Eyes Wide Shut, where he famously made Tom Cruise walk through a door 90 times to get the perfect shot.
Jesus.
He's
That's
insane.
that's crazy.
And at the request of Kubrick's widow, Spielberg joined the production of AI instead of pursuing other films, such as the first Harry Potter film, which could have been directed by
Hmm.
Steven Spielberg. Playing three different characters in Doctor Strangelove, Peter Sellers was paid $1 million, which was 55% of the film's budget.
That's pretty crazy.
Paths of Glory, one of his early films, was banned in France for nearly 2 decades for how it portrayed France negatively. However, they would soon embrace Barry Lyndon and would have surely loved Napoleon.
Hmm.
The single female presence in 1957's Paths of Glory was Christina Harlan, who would later marry Kubrick, and they would be married until his death.
Hmm.
Controversy surrounding A Clockwork Orange led to it being banned for nearly 10 years in the UK at the request of Kubrick. He was insistent on them banning it.
Really?
Well,
That's weird.
it sparked up all these
Like
copycat.
controversy around him?
No, controversy around the movie because all these people were copycatting the crimes that were happening.
Oh, I see.
They were like,
Huh.
"Oh, this is the future of the world. We could go out, rape, kill, and all this."
Pretty crazy.
Hmm. He had an extensive and rich friendship with the star of Clockwork Orange, Malcolm McDowell, on set. However, once filming finished, he never contacted him again.
What a friendship.
Famously, there was voiceover in that one too. There was narration, and he had to work for 2 weeks. And during breaks, they would play ping pong, Kubrick and Malcolm McDowell. And when he was getting paid, his paycheck came in and it was only for 1 week's pay. And so he called Kubrick and he said, "Well, I was supposed to get 2 weeks' pay. Where's the other week?" And he said, "Oh, well, you only did voiceover for 1 full week. The rest of the time you were playing ping pong."
Wow. So is Kubrick like a dick?
He's I don't know what I watched these two documentaries and it doesn't seem like he's a dick. It seems like he's
Was, I should say.
a genius of some kind, but
I guess.
just is can't really socialize properly. It's just all about the art to him. It's all about what it's going to be, not how you are right
I
now.
get that. Just that seems like crazy to me.
Well, he would like abuse actors on set all the time
Really?
too. Yeah.
In what way?
I remember there were stories with Shelley Duvall, who played Wendy from Shining.
Hmm.
I can't remember right now.
Like verbal abuse, you mean? Or physical abuse? Either way, it sounds like he's probably a dick.
It was something where the actor had to like physically like abuse the actress in some way, and he was just going like take after take after take after take, not really caring.
Hmm.
There was one story I can remember now where on A Clockwork Orange there was a big muscular guy who carries up this guy. There's a guy in a wheelchair and he has these set of stairs. So to get up them, this big muscular man picks him up and walks him up the stairs. And Kubrick made the guy do it 5, 10 times,
Hmm.
and it was an actual thing he had to do.
Yeah.
He's a strong man, but he's still carrying this man's weight
In a
and the
wheelchair.
thing. And Kubrick's just getting mad if he's doing it wrong. He
Yeah.
made Tom Cruise walk through a door 90 times.
He's the absolute perfect shot.
Hmm. Besides his first two films, Killer's Kiss and Fear and Desire, and 2001: A Space Odyssey, all of his films are based on books. And the only author to ever contribute to a script was Arthur C. Clarke on the screenplay of 2001. He would stick almost exactly to the script word for word, only allowing 2 actors in his whole career to ad lib.
One of those being Jack Nicholson.
Nope,
Really? I thought Here's Johnny was ad-libbed
I don't think so. What I have is one of them being, I thought you were to guess Peter Sellers in Lolita and Doctor
when he
Strangelove.
fell.
I'm not sure exactly which scenes were, but he was allowed to. And he's just such a funny guy. You could tell
I
it's such a smart
I,
choice.
I think I read somewhere that he like tripped at one point, and that wasn't part of the script, but they left it in.
Possibly. And the other actor was Arlie Ermy, who was the sergeant in Full Metal Jacket. You said you've never seen it, but I'm sure if you saw a picture of this guy, you'd know
Hmm.
exactly who he is. I already mentioned one, but he directed 4 films in AFI's Top 100 Greatest Movies of All Time: 1968's 2001, which is at number 15; 1964's Doctor Strangelove at 39; 1971's Clockwork Orange at 70; and 1960's Spartacus at 81.
Hmm. I wonder if anyone else has that many. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at percentage for how many films he's made, he's got to have the highest
Yeah.
percent. There's no doubt.
No, if he's only made 13 of them.
Yeah. He loved Woody Woodpecker, and he wanted to feature Woody Woodpecker in every one of his
Like the
films.
cartoon character.
Yep, the cartoon. He loved them so much, but the creator Walter Lantz refused.
Wow.
And in an interview looking back, he said something like, "There's times I regret it, but then there's times where I watch films like A Clockwork Orange and I don't."
Hmm.
So he wasn't a fan of that. I'm sure he wouldn't have liked Woody Woodpecker and
Being
Eyes Wide Shut
attached to
either.
that, yeah.
Yeah. So some awards in recognition of Kubrick. All of Kubrick films, except for The Shining, were nominated for something at the Academy Awards or Golden Globes.
I guess horrors generally don't get nominated for those things,
But there was a mixed reception right when The
as you
Shining
said,
came out.
yeah.
Now it's praised.
Hmm.
Nominations were mostly in the categories of cinematography, screenwriting, art design, and music. Only 4 films were nominated for acting at the Oscars or Golden Globes: Spartacus, Lolita, Doctor Strangelove, and A Clockwork Orange. So I'm just going to jump mostly into the Academy Awards. So there was 13 nominations, 1 win. Doctor Strangelove was nominated for Best Picture, Director, and Adapted Screenplay. And then his next film, 1969's 2001, Director, Screenplay, and it won for Best Special Visual Effects,
Hmm.
which definitely deserves. Like I said, those still stand up today. 1972 is A Clockwork Orange, Best Picture, Director, and Adapted Screenplay. 76 is Barry Lyndon for Best Picture, Director, and Adapted Screenplay. And 1988's Full Metal Jacket for Best Actor, Best Adapted Screenplay.
And so which one actually won?
Which one? I don't know what the winners were all for all those years.
Well, you said there's one,
The
one.
only win he ever got was for special visual effects
Okay.
for 2001. At the BAFTAs, he was nominated 11 times and won 3 times.
What are the BAFTAs?
The BAFTAs are the British
Hmm.
Film Association. I don't know what the T stands for. I don't know. The Golden Globes, there were 7 nominations, 1 win. And the Hugo Awards, which is the best in science fiction, he won 3 times for Doctor Strangelove, 2001, and A Clockwork Orange.
Hmm.
So now a quick little game I have. I looked at Kubrick's Rotten Tomatoes, and I was wondering if you could guess what his highest ranking movie is.
Is it Doctor Strangelove?
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
Yep, it's Doctor Strangelove with
Really?
99%. I was almost positive it was going to be 2001.
Well, I feel like, I mean, where is that on the list? Is it high up there?
It is high up there. Well, I'm going to get into that in a minute. What do you think his lowest ranking movie is?
I don't know. I'm just gonna guess Barry Lyndon.
No, no,
I don't really know many of his movies other than the few we've
it's all
discussed.
right. It was his last film, which
Eyes Wide Shut,
yeah, which wasn't. There's controversy around. Is it even his complete vision? You know,
right?
because he died before the final edit and all that. So out of 13 films, only 2 have a percentage in the 70s, 3 in the 80s, and 8 films in the 90s.
8 in the 90s. That's pretty good.
Well,
8
I
out of
mean, they're
13.
all none of them are rotten.
Mhm.
They're all 70 or up,
Mhm.
and only 2 are in the 70s.
Which ones?
Eyes Wide Shut was one, and I think the other one was Fear and Desire.
Hmm.
I don't know I can't remember for sure. Do you want to guess his Rotten Tomato average?
I don't know, 87.
90.25%.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty great. So this film would have most likely, from what the pre-production notes said, most likely would have came out in 1970. So let's look at the year in film of 1970. The top grossing films were 1. Love Story, 2. Airport, 3. MASH, number 4. Patton, and 5. Woodstock. 2 of the 5 top movies of the year were war movies. So another war movie. It was the time for war movies. This would have
Hmm.
been huge. Other notable films were Tora Tora Tora, The Aristocats, Little Big Man, Scrooge, Kelly's Heroes, and the documentary Let It Be. So also a big year for music documentaries, Woodstock and Let It Be. Arnold Schwarzenegger makes his film debut with Hercules in New York. Larry Fine, the second member of the Three Stooges, has a massive stroke, ending his career. The IMAX motion picture projection systems premiere in Expo 70 in Japan. So those are some big things. Arnold, Larry Fine, IMAX.
IMAX probably the biggest. Well, I guess Arnold. Arnold and
Arnold
IMAX.
Arnold physically and in stature is definitely the biggest.
100%. It's the case most of the time.
Yeah, some celebrities born in 1970, there was a whole bunch, but these are some of the notable ones. Simon Pegg, Queen Latifah, Vince Vaughn, Uma Thurman, Will Arnett, Tina Fey, Christopher Nolan, James Gunn, M. Night Shyamalan, Melissa McCarthy, Taraji P. Henson, Matt Damon, Ethan Hawke, and Warwick Davis. And that's just to name a few.
That's a lot of big ones.
Yeah, well, we're in the age of these. Those they should be the big ones. The
Yeah.
biggest ones should be around this time, right?
Mhm.
Because they're in their 40s now. Some big celebrity deaths in 1970. Co-creator of Godzilla series, E.G. Tsukumbura. Head coach Vince Lombardi. 43-time nominee and nine wins at the Academy Award composer Alfred Newman. And Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin both die at 27.
Mm.
And in addition to that, more spiritually, the Beatles would break up and never perform again. So
That's upsetting.
there's a big death there.
Yeah. Major upset.
Some notable film debuts: Danny DeVito in Dreams of Glass, Robert Downey Jr. in Pound, Shelley
Danny
Duvall.
DeVito and Robert Downey Jr. debuted in the same year.
Yeah, that's what I thought was crazy too.
Huh. That is weird.
I think he must have been real young, Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah,
He could have been a child
I
actor.
think he was in his teens. I didn't see the movie, but I remember seeing pictures of him when he was
Mm-hmm.
in that, and he was young, definitely.
Yeah, Shelley Duvall, who would work with Kubrick in 10 years, was in Brewster McCloud, Tommy Lee Jones in Love Story, Diane Keaton in Lovers and Strangers, Frank Langella in Diary of a Mad Housewife, Susan Sarandon in Joe, Tom Selleck in Mira Breckenridge, and Sylvester Stallone in At the Party at Kitty and Studs.
Never heard of that.
Well, I mean, it was probably one off from his softcore porno, The Italian Stallion.
Yeah.
So in the same year, though, we got Arnold and Stallone film debuts.
Mm-hmm. Had anyone actually heard of them though until they got their big role?
Well, Schwarzenegger was
He was already
he
famous
was a
for being a
bodybuilder,
bodybuilder, I guess. Yeah.
and Stallone, I mean, he's got that rock hard thing, his muscles.
This is 1970. When did Rocky come out?
I'm just guessing. I think 75.
It's in the 70s though.
It was in the 70s, yeah.
Okay. So he didn't take too long for him to blow up, I guess.
No, he blew up pretty quick. So did Arnold. Arnold blew up real quick.
Yeah. Was Terminator his first big movie, or was there something before that?
Yeah, probably his first big movie. He did Pumping Iron, which was a big documentary. I'm not sure if it's just big now or if it was big then, but that was the year of 1970, and that was kind of all of everything about Stanley Kubrick's Napoleon. I mean, if you want any more information, there is a book called Stanley Kubrick's Napoleon, the greatest movie never made. And I'm not just repeating the title of this show and the podcast you're watching. That's what the book's called. It's a textbook tribute to this unmade film. It includes correspondence, costume studies, location scouting, research material, the original treatment, essays on the historical and dramatic context of the script, an essay by Jean Tallard on Napoleon in cinema, interviews done by Kubrick detailing the project, and much more. It was edited by Allison Castle and designed by a collaboration duo of M Paris. So if you want to know more, you could check it out, but you don't need to know more. We just told you all you need to know. And then just wait for that's well, if you want to know it, go buy it actually, but Spielberg, he's coming out with it. We told you all you need to know.
HBO, you better be working on that.
Yeah, remember, it's not TV. It's HBO. And on that, we're going to call it a day.
Have a good night.